This is Sasha von Dassow, and I make this bread a lot. My friends have asked me how to make the recipe, so here goes. To make this bread, start at least 8, if not 12 to 15 to 18 to 36 hours ahead. Mix your dough. I start with 3 cups of flour. Today I'm using 2 cups of King Arthur bread flour because it really rises nicely and makes a good crumb, and 1 cup of King Arthur whole wheat flour. About 1/8 to 1/4 teaspoon of baking yeast from the store. I also add a teaspoon of salt, whatever you've got. I also use gluten. This is a powder you can find at the store in the baking section or in the natural food section. For fiber, occasionally I've been known to add flax, seed, wheat germ, and wheat bran. I can also sweeten it with honey, or you can just make it with white flour, salt, water, and yeast. Stir everything up. Add about 1.5 cups of water. Mix it all up. And check for texture. It should be kind of like a thick batter or a very wet dough, depending on how you look at it. Once it's all mixed, cover it with something that keeps the air out and kind of seals it. Not too tight. I'm using a plastic bag and a rubber band. You could use a pot with a good lid or plastic wrap. You can cook this bread in any of a number of containers as long as they're heavy and have a good well-fitting lid that kind of seals things in. You want to steam the bread a bit. Heavy pots like Dutch ovens with cast iron lids are good, Le Creuset, things like that, but no non-stick or any kind of plastic anywhere. Alright, bread dough's been sitting out fermenting and bubbling away for about 18 hours and is now ready to go. It's kind of a thick batter. I'm going to dust my breadboard pretty liberally with a fair amount of flour to keep the dough from sticking too much to the breadboard when I dump it out. Here's a close-up view of what the bread dough looks like when it's ready to go. You can see that it's very bubbly and kind of pancake battery looking, kind of shiny. It's really very spongy. I use a spatula to get it out onto the breadboard. It plops out pretty much on its own, and as you can see it's pretty blobby. It may try and get away from you, don't worry. I sort of go from the floured part and fold up the edges into the center of the bread dough and sort of create a flour crust around the whole loaf. The dough may be very loose and want to go kind of everywhere. Don't worry, eventually it'll kind of crust up and you can kind of work it over, plop it like that. Then cover it with a towel for another 10 minutes to a half hour to let it rise just a little more. And then I preheat the oven to 450 degrees, and here's the important part. Put your cooking pot in the oven to preheat also, on the middle rack right in the middle of things. When the oven's preheated, get your oven mitt, pull the towel off of your bread dough, which should be right next to the oven somewhere, open things up, get the lid out of the way, and do the plop. Kind of try and grab it by the edges, but mostly just pick it up and get it in the pot. Put that oven mitt back on, grab the lid, gently put it on top of your baking dough, close the oven, and set your timer for 20 to 25 minutes, a little bit longer if you're doing more than 1 or 2 loaves. When the time's up, come back in, pull the lid off of the bread dough, check it. It should be sort of white but getting kind of gold colored, like this. Put it back in the oven, close the door, and turn the oven down to 400 degrees and set it for another 12 to 15 minutes at least. All ovens are a little bit different, so judge kind of by color. In the end, I want kind of a dark toasty brown loaf because I used some whole wheat flour in there, and that's what I got. It pops right out of my Dutch oven and is ready to go on a baking rack to cool for 20 minutes to an hour, and this is the hard part. You gotta wait for it to be done. If you don't let it sit for a little bit, it'll look like this and be all crusty and wonderful, but the inside will still be doughy and not so good. Take your time and let it rest. Okay, it's cooled off and set. Let's dig in and see what we got. Yep, just what we wanted. Crusty, chewy on the outside, moist, kind of dense on the inside with a lot of holes. Oh yeah. If there's any bread left and you want to store it, wait a few hours to let it fully cool, and we'll see you later.